Let's talk about Blood Mercy by Vela Roth. Hey guys, I'm Marilyn and welcome back to my channel. Today we're going to be talking about the fantasy romance Blood Mercy by author Vela Roth. Don't know whether it's Vela or Vela. I might be using them interchangeably, but be lenient with me. I'm clearly not good at pronunciation of names. Before I start talking about this book, be sure to hit that subscribe button and ring that little bell. I post writing advice videos every single Wednesday and book reviews some Fridays. Also, be sure to check out my fantasy novel, which has plenty of steamy romance to go around, To Wear a Crown. You can find it at any online retailer. All the links are in the description box below. So, Blood Mercy. I'm going to read you the back cover blurb first. Unfortunately, I don't have a nice paperback or hardback copy to show you because I read it on Kindle, but I'll be reading the description on my computer and then we can dive in. One human, one immortal. Will their alliance save the kingdom, or will their forbidden love be a death sentence? When Cassia seeks out a Hesperine, he could end her mortal life in a heartbeat. But she has no fear of his magic or his fangs. She knows the real monster is the human king, her father. If he finds out she's bargaining with his enemy, he'll send her to the executioner. As a Hesperine why can't I say that? As a Hesperine diplomat, Leo must negotiate with the mortals who hate him. Cassia is different, but politics aren't why she captivates the gentle immortal. He wants more than her blood, and if he can't resist the temptation, he'll provoke the war he's trying to prevent. Blood and Ash fans will love this slow burn, steamy romance with classic fantasy world building. Follow fated mates Cassia and Leo through their epic love story for a guaranteed series happily ever after. So essentially, if I had to tell you in my own words very quickly what this book is about, it is a vampire fantasy romance where the Hesperines, or the vampires in this world, and the humans have kind of a treaty after a war they fought a long time ago that kind of tells the Hesperines exactly what they can and cannot do, and then they are actually able to live in this human country as well, although they have their own country, but some of the Hesperines still live in the mortal realm or whatever because they want to. And the kings, every king is supposed to call a summit to kind of reavow their commitment to this treaty, but the kings haven't for quite a while, and now suddenly the new king has, and so there's this Hesperine diplomatic group, embassy, coming to the mortal lands to negotiate and to get the king to sign essentially the same treaty again. And then Cassia, who is the main female character, she is the bastard daughter of the king. And she desperately wants to meet a Hesperine for reasons unknown to us until very, very late in the book. But I'll touch on that. And so they meet, fall in love, and shenanigans ensue. So this is also part of a series. I think it's about 7 books, might be 9, not 100% sure, and it's called the Blood Grace series. Now, like with all of my book reviews, I will be reviewing this book based on plot, romance, characters, writing style, pacing, and overall enjoyment, and then I will kind of add those scores together, average them out, and give a final rating for Blood Mercy. So let's look at plot. The plot of this book wasn't tight in terms of structure. So you could tell that the author hadn't used a specific kind of plotting structure, story structure, which is fine, but it was just kind of very obvious in this book where it was just events kind of happening after each other, and it wasn't a kind of nice story arc, you know, with your inciting incident, your rising action, and your climax, and, you know, it had like little crises, and then it would be fine, and then crises again, and then random new plot points, you know, kind of thing. So it was just a story without a lot of structure, but it was interesting. It is definitely an interesting plot. It sags a bit in the middle, and it actually put me into a bit of a reading slump where it took me weeks to kind of pick up the book again, because I just got into a point where I was kind of like, nah, I don't really care anymore. But once I picked it up again, I started getting into it again. I was kind of, like I said, we don't at the beginning know Cassia's motivation for wanting to talk to the Hesperenes so desperately that she like schemes to get them there, or to get herself there. And I think we would have benefited from knowing that a bit earlier, because it's kind of like dangled there to the point where when you finally find out, you've forgotten that you wanted to know. And when you do find out, it's not as exciting as I thought it would be. I thought she had some kind of like nefarious goal or something. I'm not going to tell you what it actually is, because that would be a big spoiler. But yeah, I just felt like the whole backstory and kind of the thing we were waiting for wasn't as great. And you waited a very long time for it. So this book is long. And it is slow and kind of rambling. But it does have a good political aspect to it. And as you know, if you've read To Wear a Crown, I love political fantasy. So anything with a really good political plot is good for me. And so I really enjoyed that aspect, and enjoyed the way that Cassia thinks about, you know, all of the politics of the kingdom and how to have an influence on that while still remaining safe from her cruel father, and Leo being an actual diplomat and having to think about these political situations. I found that very interesting. It was also very complex and intricate world building, which I liked, but it was also at times a bit much. So there's a glossary at the end of the book, which I didn't know until I got to the end of the book, but that's my fault. But I think if I like referenced the glossary throughout, it would have been much easier. But I think if your world building requires a reader to keep referring back to a glossary, it's maybe a bit too much, or not as well woven into the story as it should be. So there's just a lot of world building happening, and I get that it's because it's like this big series. So I think the first book, it will have its kind of teething pains while you're trying to, or teething issues, growing pains, while you're trying to figure out exactly what the situation is in this world. It's a very interesting take on vampires. So it's never called vampires in this book, it's Hesperenes or Hesperines, and they are very kind, good-natured, sensitive, compassionate, in touch with nature, in touch with other people's feelings, kind of thing. And I very much enjoyed kind of that take on it, and that it's a different take, and it's interesting. But, and this is purely my preference, I was missing some of the like dark, dangerous aspects of vampires in this book. I think if you go into a book with the idea of a vampire romance, you are expecting a little bit of that. There's a little bit of that, you know, almost attraction because it's dangerous and because it's kind of dark. And I do lean towards more like dark romance, dark fantasy romance things. So this is, I think, purely a personal preference, but there was a little bit of me that was like, they're too tame. They're too kind of innocuous and wouldn't hurt a fly kind of thing for my taste for a vampire romance. So some of the plot was also confusing to follow. You didn't necessarily always understand why something was as much of a crisis as it was portrayed as, and kind of what was happening and where we were going. So the plot was it's difficult because it's really good in some aspects and then kind of really rambly and long and slow in others. So I'm going to give it a 3.7 out of 5. Now, the romance. There was a good build-up of the romance. I'll say that. I really enjoyed that. They had long, meaningful conversations, and it felt like they actually really liked each other, which, you know, is sadly very rare in romance books, that the two characters actually like each other. Yeah, that's a social commentary if you were looking for one. But it seemed like they had built a friendship before the love came along. And they put each other first. They really wanted to help each other. It was so a sweet and caring relationship. It was very romantic, this kind of forbidden love thing. And I felt like they really brought to the relationship what each of them needed. I can say this because the blurb says they're fated mates, so they are. You only find that out at the end of the book, and I don't know why this doesn't feel believable to me, because they are very sweet together and everything, but it just feels like there wasn't that almost urgency that you get with other fated mate stories. And once again, I don't know whether that's just me looking for something a bit more dark, but yeah, I didn't feel that kind of desperate need, like unexplainable desperate need that you have with fated mates usually. Then let's talk about the sex scenes. They were okay. So they were well written. I've definitely read much worse sex scenes, but I've also read better sex scenes. I think I've written better sex scenes. The scenes were very sentimental and purple prosy and like overly emotional. Now, I do like love scenes to be emotional and romantic, but it almost felt like any eroticism was, you know, overshadowed completely by this kind of sappy, sentimental feeling that was going on. And then something that really bothered me in this book is that she created her own words for male and female genitalia. And it's kind of like in this ancient Hesperian language. And I get why she did that, because it's really cringy sometimes to write like the actual words and you don't know which words to use because you don't want to be too clinical, but you don't want to be too gross, and you don't want to use the same words over and over. You don't want to, you know, use weird purple prosy words that just make people laugh. But she didn't pull it off for me. I was just kind of distracted every time they used that word and kind of wanted to laugh, and it just didn't work for me. So it kind of broke the immersion for me, because every time I'd see one of those words, I'd just be like, okay. And so, yeah. As I said with the plot, it was missing to me the kind of dark, dangerous aspect of that you'd usually expect with a vampire romance. And so, yeah, it was good, but not my favorite romance, so I'm going to give it a 3.9 out of 5. Then, the characters. So, Cassia is a strong, headstrong, smart, brave, determined character. She has a keen awareness of what's happening in her world, what the political situation is, how she needs to navigate that world in order to survive, kind of thing. And I really, really enjoy that. She's really, really smart and makes good decisions and is cautious but still brave. And I think she had really great character growth throughout this, you know, kind of getting her agency and deciding that she can make a difference. The only thing I'd say about Cassia is that I wish her motivation had been revealed a bit sooner. Then there's Leo. I really like Leo. He's sensitive, intelligent, compassionate, kind of academic, very talented, and he's like soft-spoken and kind and caring. And I think that is refreshing to see in a love interest, in a fantasy romance. I think it would have made more sense to me if this wasn't necessarily a vampire romance. But I think that I like this kind of character. I like his personality. I think it would just have been like him also being dangerous, him also being well, he is powerful, but, you know, powerful in a different way, and kind of showing that there is that darkness somewhere, and that he can be quite threatening and scary to other people. But that isn't there. He's kind of just sweet and well-spoken and soft and compassionate always. But I do think that anyone would fall in love with him within 2 seconds of meeting him, to be fair. He has an interesting background, interesting family dynamics, interesting take on politics. He has a good motivation, and he's just a wholesome, cool character. Then there's the other Hesperenes that come with the, like, diplomatic mission. I kept confusing them. I still don't know what their names are and who is what. I know there's an uncle and an aunt and cousins, you know, fated mates and things, but I still don't really know, and I don't really care. And then the other side characters in the book were okay, but not memorable at all. The antagonist in the book, and I won't tell you who it is because that's also kind of a plot twist, but I don't know, I just kind of didn't have any feeling towards him. I was just kind of meh about him. It didn't feel like enough of a threat towards kind of the power of the Hesperenes, you know. It was kind of built up like how much power these Hesperenes actually have, although you don't see it a lot. That it didn't feel like a true threat. So yeah, that was just kind of meh. And then she has a dog called Knight. I love him, but it would be very difficult for you to write a book with a dog in it that I would not like the dog. So I can't really give her extra points for that. So I'm going to say for the characters, a 3.8 out of 5. Then pacing. It's very slow at the beginning. The characters only meet at like 20%, 25% into the book. The book is just slow and long and rambling in general. And it has inconsistent pacing as well. Like, stuff will happen very quickly, and then other things take very long to happen, and then something happens quickly. And I don't think it's necessarily like balanced very well. So for the pacing, I'm going to give it a 3 out of 5. She has a good writing style. It's very old-fashioned and sort of historical. And it leans a little bit towards verbal prose. So sometimes the writing looked like writing, and it kind of pulled me out of the immersion in the story, but it wasn't bad writing at all, and so I'm going to give it a 3.5 out of 5. And then overall enjoyment. The parts I enjoyed, I really enjoyed, but it did push me into a reading slump. And during the last like 10% of the book, I was kind of just like waiting for it to end. I was like, please, can we just get to the end of the book so I can be done with this book? And that's never a good thing. So I'm going to say my overall enjoyment was about a 3 out of 5. So that means that the total, or the average, that I give for Blood Mercy by Vela Roth is 3.48. So all in all, not a bad book. If you enjoy fantasy romance and you're leaning towards something a bit more classically romantic and soft and with like a lot of sentimentality and flowing writing, I would recommend this book for you. I think it would be good then, but I do not plan on reading any of the other books in this series. So yeah, that is my review of Blood Mercy. Hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, please be sure to give it a thumbs up. That helps me out quite a lot. Also, comment if you've read this book and what you thought about it. Remember to hit that subscribe button and ring that little bell, and to check out my fantasy book, To Wear a Crown. As always, you can find me on my website, Instagram, Facebook, Tumblr, Twitter, TikTok, and BookBub. All the links are listed below, and then I'll see you guys in the next video. Bye!